Thank you. Number 6 we're on. So,
Do you support gay marriage and or the repeal of the SFW?
As a state legislator, we had the opportunity back, I think it was in 2006, to decide whether or not this issue should go to the people for a vote, or whether or not it should be decided by a court decision. I voted at least 2 or 3 times to say that the issue should be decided by the people of Massachusetts, to allow that to go forward. Over 500,000 people signed a petition, wanted the issue to go on the ballot. I supported that. That's their right under Article 48 of our state constitution, and I think that should be honored. That didn't happen here. Fundamentally, I think the definition of marriage is a states' rights issue. So I hope I don't sound too much like a teacher here, because I teach constitutional law, so I'll just kind of give you the short version of how I think inside. When our founding fathers created the Constitution, because the Articles of Confederation were not working well, they were really concerned about the central government being too powerful and taking over the states and reducing people's freedoms and liberties. So they were very clear when they wrote Article 1 of the Constitution, Section 8, to say, here are the powers of Congress. Article 1, Section 8 are the delegated powers of Congress, and this is what Congress can do, period. And then they put in the 10th Amendment to the Constitution, the last part of our Bill of Rights, that says anything that's not in the Constitution is reserved to the states and the people respectively. Meaning if it's not a delegated power to Congress, Congress can't do it, but that power can go to either the people or the states, depending on what it is. Marriage is not mentioned in the federal Constitution. Period. There's nothing in Article 1, Section 8 that you can look at and say, here's how Congress can regulate marriage. So it's a states' rights issue, and I think that's where it belongs. And our founding fathers were totally fine with different states having different kind of local community rules. State laws were different, that's okay. And they certainly wanted to keep the central government small and focused. I don't think we've achieved that totally. I think the federal government's too big, too large, too powerful, gets into too much of the business of the states. But at the end of the day, as a member of Congress, I got to stay true to the Constitution. Thank you.
number 7. Emily.
Emily Mitchell. Should the federal government take action to limit the emissions of greenhouse gases, and if so, how?
Absolutely. So if you look at the ability of Congress to regulate greenhouse gases, that's one of those problems that you can't leave state by state. The controversial issue, so the short answer is yes, but I'll give you a little bit more. The controversial bill out there, a political issue, is cap and trade, or cap and tax, depending on what side you're on, and whether or not the United States should have a tax policy that either, I guess the right word would be tax companies who do not comply with some new stringent environmental regulations. And I don't think we should be doing that. This is a global problem, and I said a few minutes ago, the issue was jobs. So if we put American companies under its own rules, saying, if you're an American company, these are your rules, and if you're a company in China or India or some other industrialized nation that's not agreeing with this accord, if you will, for lowering emissions across the globe, you're saying to American companies that you can't compete in the global environment. This is something where the President and Congress needs to find consensus among the industrialized nations and have one policy for the world that doesn't put American jobs at stake and doesn't ship jobs overseas, which I'm not going to put our business people in that position. Thank you.
Thank you. Whoever at number 8, who's my number 8? You are.
What should the government do to reduce the deficit and debt?
What should the government do to reduce the national debt? That's my favorite question. Thank you for asking. $13.5 trillion in national debt right now. $40,000 each. Pony up. Who's got it? Any down payments? No. This country had a huge national debt after World War II, and we paid it back. We paid it back to ourselves. We paid it back through economic expansion. There was a great economic boom after World War II, and we were able to get our debt back down. But over the past couple of decades, especially since, sound a little partisan here, but especially since this administration took hold, the national debt and the spending has just been unchecked. One of the reasons it's been unchecked is because we only have one political party in control. And I don't care what political party it is. When the Republicans had the White House and both houses of Congress, we didn't get it right either. So Don't think I'm just picking on the current political party that's in power. When one political party's in control, there is no check and balance in the system. And so that party has a lot of power to spend and spend and spend without little consequence or debate. So, a few things that we can do to get the spending under control and the debt down. Elect Republicans. There you go. That's everything's solved. That's a joke. Come on. There's a couple constitutional things we need to do. President Reagan talked about it. President Clinton talked about it. They were both right. We need a constitutional amendment to require a balanced budget every year. At the state level, we can only pass a budget that's balanced. We can only spend as much as we're projected to take in. It seems to make sense. At your house, I'm sure that you guys do this with your jobs. You only are going to spend, hopefully, what you're going to take in. If you keep spending more than you're taking in, long term you have a problem. We have a problem here. So we need to have a law, if you will, a constitutional agreement that we will only spend what we're going to take in. And we also need to give the president, which he does not have right now, the ability, what's called a line item veto. The governors have it in most states, but the president does not because it's not in the Constitution. And what that means is, for example, at the state level, when we pass a bill and it goes to the governor, if there's something in that bill that the governor thinks is inappropriate, offensive, whatever the case may be, overspending, maybe a special giveaway to a political friend, the governor can veto it. He can line item that line of spending right out of the budget, and he returns it to the legislature. And it's out, it's gone, unless 2/3 of the members of the legislature, the House and the Senate, vote to override the governor's veto. And what happens many times is when a governor line item vetoes something out, the legislature never takes it up, because either there's not 2/3 majority, or they don't even want to vote on it because it's something, some special giveaway to some special friend or something. And so that reduces spending at the state level. The president does not have that ability to do it. He gets, say, let's take the health care bill. The president got the health care bill, everything good and everything bad in it, and he had a choice, sign it or not. That's it. He couldn't veto things out that he didn't agree with. He couldn't do anything. And so he signed it. But all the wasteful spending in there, including a $500 billion cut to Medicare in there, if he didn't agree with it, which we'll never know, he could have taken that out. But he had to sign the bill. President Bush, so I'll pick on a Republican here. President Bush didn't veto a bill for 7 years. Lots of bills came to his desk, I'm sure, that had offensive things in it. But at the end of the day, he had to sign it or send the whole bill back. If the president had the line item veto, he could say that's offensive spending, or that earmark isn't appropriate, or we can't afford this. And those items would go away and the spending would be reduced. And those are three things if you count the Joe. Which is true. A balance of government is good. To have both political parties having a seat at the table and do those constitutional authorities changes, I think would help. Is that a good answer? Thank you.
All right, number 9.